Welcome back, guys, to another uncommentary video, and today we're going to be kicking off our series with some juicy drama, information, controversy.
Yeah.
So this is going to be the first video in our Say You, Say Me series, where Hao and I go back and forth and discuss some trending topics, some current issues that we think are interesting, we believe you'll find interesting as well, and you'll just get to hear our perspective, and in the comments, of course, present your own if you disagree or agree. Now, today we're going to be doing a real quick overview of the ongoing, for now, LEC and NEOM drama with League of Legends. And so I'm going to let Hao get started on the facts and sort of presenting what is NEOM, because you probably know what LEC is.
Sure. Yeah. So, and for those of you who doesn't know, LEC stands for League of Legends European Championship.
Mhm.
It's essentially the competitive league of the League of Legends game in Europe. So I think on Tuesday, that was 28th of July, the LEC came out and announced the partnership with NEOM, which is kind of a government-backed Saudi Arabian company that's essentially focused on its new mega city project. And the project's supposed to be $500 billion. And they're planning to build this kind of an extra governmental city-state in the northwest Saudi Arabia coast. And the city is designed to be this extremely luxury and modern city that's designed for the elites of Saudi Arabia, as well as international elites and visitors. And there are a couple of very controversial things that we want to talk about related to NEOM, just to give you guys a little bit of background why it created so much outrage within the community. So obviously, NEOM was this immense city-building project, came under fire after people realized that they were forcefully removing and evicting local indigenous people, in particular the Huated tribe, out of their natural home, right? And this is a tribe of roughly 20,000 people. And obviously this created a lot of issue with the Western publications and the Western society because we feel it, right? Like people were forcefully being removed from their homes for a project by the government created for the elites. And that obviously did not resonate well with majority of the community. And also, most recently, an activist by the name of Abdul Rahim al-Huwati, who is a member of the Huated tribe, were killed after he has openly spoke against the government and this project. And that obviously exacerbated the whole issue of human rights violations committed by the Saudi Arabian government as well as the NEOM organization. And lastly, obviously, as we mentioned, NEOM is the brainchild of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, who has obviously a very strong tie with the government itself. And we all know that the Saudi Arabian government has had a long history of human rights violations, especially related to LGBT issues as well as gender equality issues. And the combination of all these things is what really drove a lot of the community outcry because people thought it was hypocritical by the LEC organization to have a partnership that essentially stands against everything they've been promoting over the last few years. Things such as gender equality, such as LGBT equality. So with that, let's take a quick look at what was the initial response from both the fan base as well as the casters and the internal employees of Riot and LEC.
Right, so I just want to start out by saying, huge shout out to both the casters, rioters, internal staff, at any level of the organization, and of course, all the people on social media that have spoken out as well, because this was really, I think, what pressured Riot into making a tough decision later down the road. It was less than 24 hours, actually, and we'll get into that later. But the initial response was very quick. I mean, the announcement was made, and within hours really... Yeah. A lot of the LEC on-stage talent, right? You have a lot of the casters and supporting staff there taking to Twitter and sort of voicing their opinion on I'm very disappointed. This is terrible. I do not support this idea. For a lot of people, I think that it's easy from the outside looking in to say, oh, you're just virtue signaling. Like, you work with Riot, you support them, your job is safe, blah, 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 blah. And, it's very easy to hate when you don't have these details, when you don't have the knowledge. And it came out a little bit later when these same casters were responding to some threads on Reddit and responding to some people on Twitter where they said, like, this was a difficult decision for us. We really did have to put our livelihood on the line.
Right.
And not even that, but, because they are what makes LEC so entertaining. They are what brings that unique charm to the community and to that league, right? So this is something that they've been working to build for definitely the past year as LEC rebranded, but even before then, a lot of these people were still in the scene. So they've dedicated a good chunk of their lives to this, and they put that on the line to stand up for what they believed in. And I just think that like that's very commendable. It's just fantastic to see real people like directly involved with Riot production to speak out like this when they feel like they need to. And of course, the fans as well. I think that while Hao and I don't agree with all of the fans' perspectives and all of the rationale behind why the community did what they did, the action was still net positive, right? Like we still exerted a good amount of pressure on Riot that eventually led to, on Wednesday, July 29th, they officially canceled the partnership with NEOM. So just seeing the casters come together, rioters come together, the community come together for a common cause, I think that seeing everybody work together has just been fantastic. And it really showcases like what you can do as a consumer and what you can do as an employee to really impact your organization.
Yeah, so I guess now with the facts out of the way and we know kind of what happened, maybe let's go into a little bit of discussion of what we think was going on. So I think the first thing I want to focus on is this idea of Riot, right? Because obviously, I think Riot, as well as LEC and LCS, over the last few years now has been promoting this certain image of being very relevant and up to date when it comes to social issues, right? It's an image that they have clearly been trying to build for themselves. And I think this, to me, really shows the hypocrisy behind their action over the last few years. Because when it truly mattered, when they truly could have made a difference here, they clearly went for money. And I think, in my opinion, right, it would have been really easy for them to understand, okay, there's going to be backlash. We are partnering with someone who clearly does not share the same belief that the society we're a part of values so much. Nonetheless, they disregarded all of that. And at the end of the day, the only thing I think in this case they really cared about is to have this partnership in order to get the funding that they need to continue to build their projects and benefit financially. And I really don't know what it would take going forward for Riot to kind of earn back some of those trust that they've lost during the last couple of days. Because clearly, I think their action indicates that what they were trying to do was merely kind of a PR stunt. It's all about building this image so that their fans, their audience base can associate themselves with.
I mean, I absolutely agree that Riot really, really messed up here. I mean, they have absolutely destroyed the trust of their larger community, as well as specifically within the LEC, right? Like their own staff, I think, are going to have a hard time coming into the office and facing the people that made this decision for them, right? And one thing that I want to talk about, and I do want to get your perspective on this as well. You know, you're talking about Riot did this for the money. And I think that that could not be more true. Because when you think about it, this is obviously a leadership decision, whether it be, you know, an LEC leadership or maybe the head of esports global development or something like that. This is a guy that's high up, someone that's very educated.
Oh, absolutely.
And someone that has to know, without a doubt, how this will reflect on the company from a public relations perspective. They have to know they're getting flack for this. And this decision that got signed off on by multiple people, that got greenlit and announced on the 28th, is just so, it speaks volumes to Riot leadership. And it speaks volumes to, you know, where their priorities really lie. Like, they knew they were going to get flack for this, and then, you know, their analysts in the back had some numbers to show them that said, it's worth it. This is, you know, the community outrage is not going to lose you as much money as the sponsorship will gain you. And luckily, we were able to prove them wrong. We saw the deal redacted. We're not sure if it's permanent or just tabled temporarily right now, but we'll see in, I think, the coming weeks. But I just think that, like, that speaks to where the logic was behind this decision. And so I want to talk to you and pass it off to you a little bit to talk about the business ethics behind this decision. Like, from a moral and business ethics perspective, what should Riot have done to perhaps secure the sponsorship, but like also, would it be possible to do the right thing at the same time?
Yeah, I think that's a good point to bring up. And I think, you know, we've seen this over the last few decades now. Back in the day, it was all about the bottom line, right? It's all about maximizing shareholder return. And that hasn't been the case over the last few years, where companies and corporations are now promoting greater business ethics as well as, you know, social responsibilities. And, you know, one of the largest equity investors in the world, year after year, been releasing an annual letter to the CEOs of all their invested companies about the importance of corporate social ethics. And I think in this case here, when we're looking at specifically the LEC, Riot, and NEOM partnership here, I think there are definitely opportunities where Riot could have done a lot more and made a real difference. And one thing I want to point out is, I actually believe a potential partnership could actually be the more ethical thing to do here. And hear me out here. I think for Riot as a company, it has such an audience-based platform that can be utilized in a way to spread social changes as well as cultural changes more effectively than a lot of other things. Because sports, whether it's traditional professional sports or the newer esports, has such a gravity to themselves that they can attract so many people. And I think League of Legends is certainly one of those medias where we can use and utilize it to kind of promote some of these social justice causes. And Riot really is in a position to do this here, because if we think about it, a potential partnership with NEOM, one of the bigger projects in the Middle Eastern area, can potentially serve as a stepping stone for them to essentially bring them to an audience that they have not been able to yet penetrate, right? To potentially set up another competitive league within the Middle Eastern region. And it's something that we know that Riot has been thinking about, both for the Middle Eastern as well as Africa. And if we think about that, that would have been a tremendous opportunity for Riot to really go forward and really push some of these social justice causes that they have been standing behind over the last few years. But they're not doing that, right? The moment when they were faced with public backlash, the first thing that came up to their mind is, instead of, let's utilize our leverage to try to do something great here, they simply step back and say, okay, it doesn't seem to be received well by our audience, so we're just going to call it off, right? I think their mind never went to the place of, what can we possibly do with this tool in our hand to really make the world a better place? I don't think that idea has ever crossed their mind. And clearly, we can tell by their initial announcement, that was not something they considered originally, because if it did, it would have obviously been a part of the original announcement. But the fact that it wasn't means they didn't really think about that. So it's all about the bottom line here. And I think from a business ethic perspective, clearly something is missing here, and I think Riot definitely got it wrong. So with that being said, I do want to quickly touch on one other thing. I want to extend this Riot hypocrisy even a step further. And I want to say that while I do commend the community for speaking out against the partnership initially, I do think we could have, as a community, demanded much more. And as I mentioned earlier, right, like Riot had a platform that they could have utilized to do a lot more and make a real change potentially culturally to the Middle Eastern area, but they didn't do that. I think our community at the same time also didn't really think about that too much. I think our reaction of calling off the deal was a little bit of a knee-jerk reaction. It was something where we're trying to disassociate ourselves from this whole situation as fast as possible. But yet at the same time, I think we could have pushed Riot to do the right thing. And I think that's really a missed opportunity, because clearly in this case, our voice was heard.
While I do definitely agree that Riot made several missteps leading up to this announcement, one of which is, to me, it seemed like they didn't even, like you said, consider a positive spin. They didn't even think, once they had that general reaction from the Western audience, from LEC and from a lot of the North American fans, they were just like, we're going to step away. Like, it's a very reactionary, like, oh, we got to cancel it right now, right? And that, to me, is, again, such a typical corporate, like, saving your face kind of move, right? Where they're just like, we have ruined our public image, and instead of trying to explain ourselves or do anything like that, or say, like, here were our actual plans, and, showing that they had greater intentions and better intentions, they were just like, well, yeah, you're right. Like, you caught us. It was about the money. We don't have anything else to say, right? Which is just very disappointing to me. But at the same time, and this is a point that I saw come up multiple times on Twitter and on Reddit, is, do companies have a moral responsibility to make the world a better place, right? Regardless, companies are there to make money. And can anybody really blame Riot for doing that? I think that in this sense, they just did it in a very distasteful way, given the current political climate, given, who they are partnering with in this sort of very emotionally charged environment right now. And so I think that was a mistake they made. But ultimately, from a business perspective, you understand why Riot would want to secure, tens, hundreds of millions of dollars for this. And as well as, that Riot wants to create EMEA servers, right? Europe, Middle East, Africa. And so they want to develop a new region there. And NEOM is the key place to do that, right? If this project really gets off the ground, if they're really able to invest, that $500 billion into developing this, desert utopia, essentially, then, what better place would there be to cement your esports league in the region? Like, everyone wants to go there internationally. It's just a great place. If you were, a robot trained to make the best business decisions, I don't think that this was terrible. But again, it's just, now I think, like you're saying with BlackRock, and we've seen this trend of a lot of consumers especially sort of pushing for sustainability, pushing for like the blue ribbon, like I want to make sure the goose down in my jacket is sustainable and came from a farm that was like treated their geese well, right? And so because there's all of this consumer pushback now, we've seen the impact it can make, and I hope that we continue to see that, because this is what really puts the pressure on. Like, if these companies didn't have to, they would just go ahead with these deals. But when you hear from the community, when you have this sort of pressure applied from a social perspective, I think that this is one example that shows that it can work. Now, with that having been said, we do know that there is still uncertainty. Shortly after the deal was revoked, I believe it was the day after, so on Thursday, a couple of rioters initially, but then more came out from the LA office specifically tweeting about some internal discussion. And we're going to have another video coming out to discuss that and sort of speculate and talk about what that might be about, because I know that a lot of you are interested in that as well. But that covers it for this video, though. We will see you guys next time, and thank you for watching. See ya.